Hello, welcome to episode 5 of the Hobo Show. I'm George. Just for those that have never seen the show before, God help you. I call it the Hobo Show because I'm temporarily a homeless vet staying at a veteran shelter in Augusta, Maine until I can get back on my feet following an eviction because my landlord is an asshole. Was an asshole, no longer my landlord. If you're out there, landlord, you're an asshole. Anyways, but my situation is looking good, just as an update. Good things are happening. And I am here today in a graveyard in Augusta, Maine. I'll give you a quick little pan. I find this morbidly cool. It's an 1800s graveyard, so it's not just any graveyard. It's kind of cool. This is some kind of thing that they put up. But anyways, I'm going to be reviewing the latest episode of the Orville, episode 11, and I'm going to talk about the Crisis on Earth X crossover event that the CW just did. So, without further ado, here we go. So, as far as the Orville, episode 11, which was called New Dimensions, I thought this was, as usual, an unexpectedly awesome episode. Well, at this point, I start to expect it, because it starts off like Orville does best. It throws you off as to where it's going in the episode. They don't spoil things in their trailers, really. I think that's what's cool about the show. They do leave a lot of surprises in the episodes. I think that's one thing people can say is fair about the Orville, is he really does not give away too much of what's about to happen in a future episode. And you don't know until, it's sort of like Doctor Who in that respect. The BBC do a good job of covering up details of plots and leave the fans theorizing, and usually incorrectly, in that particular case. Game of Thrones is a different story. But you don't know what twists are coming in when you see a commercial for the next episode of the Orville. I mean, you can see it can look like one type of episode and turn into another completely, and that's exactly what happened in this one. Because basically they did some high concept sci-fi is what I want to call it, because there really is a thing about two-dimensional space, and we live in 3 dimensions. So if something exists in 2 dimensions, they wouldn't even be able to perceive us in 3 dimensions, and vice versa. So we could be living in the same universe but in different dimensions, and not even, occupying that same space but not even realizing it. And they take that concept to a new something that has never really been done in Star Trek as far as I can recall. And I'm pretty much geeky enough to remember most of the episodes, so I don't recall one being quite like this. They do a great Doctor Who shout out, which I'll get to in a second. The episode it does one thing that I think, my personal opinion is that the episode was, one of the things the episode was trying to do was make a commentary. I think Seth MacFarlane was trying to make a commentary about, back on Star Trek The Next Generation, starting with season, I think it was 2, season 2, Geordi suddenly became, he went from being the blind helmsman to the chief engineer on the Enterprise. And there was really no transition to that. It just happened. And it was kind of strange, because I mean, if you're a Starfleet officer and you're trained and you're flying the ship, to go from that to chief engineer in the course of like a year, and the reason I can say it was a year is because at the end of the show, Picard and them talked about how they'd been together for 7 years. So each season really was a year in Star Trek in their perception. So Geordi literally went in 1 year from the helmsman to the chief engineer. And production-wise, it was because they wanted to have someone as the chief engineer as as a character. They realized that was a mistake to have a chief engineer of the week that they had for that first season. So they ended up creating the Scotty role and picked Geordi instead of casting someone else, because they already had a huge ensemble cast. Well, I think that Seth MacFarlane was trying to poke fun at that a little bit by giving a little bit more exposition as to why one of the helms people, or technically the navigator, but he's supposed to be like Chekhov, but one of the helms people would jump from that position to the chief engineer with no reason. And it turned out they used a very clever plot device where Kelly Grayson, the first officer, starts going over how he's basically underachieving himself. And I think that's actually realistic. There are people out there that do that. They have the skills, but they haven't been pushed in the right direction. I kind of think I'm kind of like that in real life. But she kind of sees the potential that why isn't he doing more, because he's got these incredible scores on his, whatever it is, his officer stats. But he learned to hide it, kind of suppress them so that he wasn't looked so he can blend in with people around him. But he's actually kind of a genius. And he ends up she gives him a chance to prove himself. She pitches for him, and basically the captain reluctantly agrees to allow him to get a chance. And he finds out, and this is where it's another clever part of the writing, is he finds out that something we all knew for the end of the first episode is that she, because of her friendship, because Admiral Halsey was friends with her father, she used her influence to get him a chance to be the captain of the Orville, because she believed in him. And the captain finds out, because she lets it slip, that she did the same thing for him, and then he gets offended because he doesn't know if he really deserved it or if it was a favor that was called in. But he talks to the Admiral, and the Admiral points out, you have since then proven that was correct. But he has doubts about himself throughout the episode. But that was nice how they tied that in, and it kind of created some closure for that particular little loose thread in the show for this season. So they tightened that circle up, and at the same time, you have a reason why the navigator is going to go from being the navigator to the chief engineer, and it transitions throughout the episode, and he comes up with some clever ideas. They get stuck in two-dimensional space, but they have to, in order to survive and not be flattened like pancakes, he has to create some kind of a quantum sort of shield around the ship. And this is where the Doctor Who shout-out comes in. When they're in the shuttle, and by the way, spoilers if anybody hasn't seen the episode by now, when they're in the shuttle, he comes up with something that creates the effect of making the ship basically bigger on the inside than the outside, two different dimensions. So they compare it, as Seth MacFarlane's character, Captain Mercer, actually compares it to, like Doctor Who's phone booth. I kind of wish in some ways he hadn't said that, because it would have been neat if they could somehow have the Doctor exist in this universe and like make a guest appearance. They could call him the Stranger or something, just not get in trouble with the BBC. Or maybe they could just do it and get the BBC to allow it, just because it is sort of a comedy, a dramedy, and have the Doctor, or a character like the Doctor, played by any of the former actors, show up. That would have been pretty cool. But now they've made it clear it's a TV show in the Orville's universe. Not that they can't have a character like him, though, played by one of the former actors. That was neat, and so good high-concept sci-fi, good character arc development, good loose ends tied up there, and they actually had that funny moment where they're talking about having a cat on the bridge, which is, I think, a callback to Data's cat Spot, and also the dog, Porthos. I think it's a call-out to him, too, from Enterprise. The captain had a dog. But I like the part where Isaac's petting him, because he says, well, you pet... Isaac's trying to find out what the purpose of an animal is, or a pet, and, how you pet him, it makes you feel better. So Isaac's petting the helmsman, I forget his name, the redhead. That was pretty funny. Actually, that was the only funny part. But it's still a great episode, and they had a great episode for the first officer, Kelly, who Adrienne Palicki is a very good actress, and she realistically had a good support, not just supporting, she's definitely gets a chance to shine in this episode. And her and the captain's relationship's getting stronger. I mean, it's pretty obvious at this point they're going to end up hooking back up. Or it's going to be a will they, won't they. So we'll see how far that goes by season 2. I think it's going to end up being one of those things. It's going to be like Riker and Troy. I think it's obvious he's got that tied to the TNG callbacks. And I think him and Kelly are supposed to be, what if Riker and Troy had gotten married and it didn't work out, and then they ended up working together on the ship. I think it's kind of like that. But with Riker and Troy, they never really had too much of the angst. Riker got jealous of her a lot. She never got jealous of him, so it was never an issue because she's Beta Z, and Riker was always the one getting jealous and being a hypocrite because he could do whatever he wanted with women. So I think it's kind of like where they're going with the two of them. Kelly and Ed, I think, are going to hook up. They may not hook up till the end of the show, but I think it will eventually happen, and they'll tease it all along. Like, they'll get jealous of each other and things like that all the way up until the show ends. Hopefully not for a long time, though. Okay, so that wraps up my thoughts on the Orville. Oh, and I never did talk about the previous episode, Firestorm, which was an Alara Katan episode. Anything with Alara Katan's good. I love her. I said it in a prior episode. She's kind of like Supergirl if she became a crew member. I think it's a cool concept. She's good-looking. She looks good in her makeup as an alien, and she's just been given a good role. I like the uniform coloring on this show. It isn't just red is red. They've got a dark maroon red for the security people. They got almost an orangish tan color for the people like the helms and the engineers. They've got a purple. The admirals have like a purplish color, and green for the doctor, and command is blue. I would say that's different, but it's not. It is if you're comparing it to Star Trek. But in the Navy, a captain would wear blue or tan, depending on what part of type of ship he's serving on, or whatever. But so it's different. I like the way that they change up the colors. I'm hoping they do the traditional change the uniforms every season like Star Trek did, because that was kind of became a joke in and of itself, that Starfleet changes. They must have fashion designers that worry about their galactic image, because they change their uniforms more often than real life military ever did in the course of time. And I think it'd be funny if they gave them new uniforms next year and they make fun of that, like, oh gee, we're changing our uniforms again. But because I like the uniforms, but I really think they could be improved. All right, so now on to the Crisis on Earth X. The CW crossover event this year was the best one they've had so far. They've built this universe up really nicely, and since I'm a big DC fan, I remember going back to this is the closest you're going to get to Crisis on Infinite Earths. I think the only way this could have been better is if they actually had brought in Tyler Hoechlin as Superman and had him meet everybody. They got to do that next year. I mean, that was really unfortunate that they didn't do that, because I mean, I want to see Reverse Flash go up against Superman, because I don't think his little would work on Superman, and I think that Superman could, he claims he was faster and implied that he could kill Superman. I don't think so. Not unless he was in a Red Sun or something. But the episode was really good. They tied up a lot of things that built up over the course of the CW's shows. And they killed off, spoilers, they killed off Professor Stein. We all knew that Victor Garber was leaving the show. I didn't expect him to kill him, but I'm not shocked either. And the thing about the CW is if anybody dies, you can easily bring them back. They've brought back just about everybody that's died, either as a doppelganger from another Earth or as a time-altered thing there from Legends of Tomorrow. The only one they really haven't brought back is Eddie, and they probably will eventually. He'll show back up. Now that Iris and Barry are married, her ex-fiance, who killed himself to save the world for no reason, because Eobard's still alive. But anyways, he'll come back. I can guarantee it. Something will happen. It'll probably be another Earth version of him. And so that's my prediction about that. They brought in a new character, the Ray, who's been in DC Comics for decades. The Ray's pretty cool. He's part of the Freedom Fighters in the comics, which is a superhero group that fought on Earth where Nazis. Uncle Sam led them. The actor who plays the Ray, a little trivia, Topher something, or Toby or Topher, I think it's Toby. I should have written it down. I didn't have my notes with me. He is an actor who's been known to Doctor Who. He played Alonzo, in Voyage of the Damned. He was the guy that flew the ship. He also hooked up with Captain Jack in David Tennant's final episode. He kind of set them up at this alien bar, slipped a note and kind of nodded to Captain Jack. His name is Alonzo, and but yeah, he's a real life gay actor playing a gay character, a gay superhero, and they brought Captain Cold back as Citizen Cold, the two of them were lovers. Now here's what's interesting: the actor Wentworth Miller, who plays Captain Cold, or Citizen Cold in this one, is also a real-life gay actor. So CW did something interesting here. They took two gay actors and made them play two gay roles, which is actually kind of cool that they did that. They didn't make a straight person play a gay person. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but they gave the chance. I think that they did that. Not many shows do that. I'm not sure. I could be wrong. It could be like lesbian actresses who have played lesbian characters or bisexual characters before, but for men, I don't think it's very common. But whatever. I mean, it just shows that they're progressive, which is cool. And they showed a lot of male kisses between them. That's fine. We're all growing up out there in the universe to not be offended by any of these things. But the Ray is a great new character. He really belongs on Legends of Tomorrow. They brought Citizen Cold over to join the crew for a little while. He would fit in perfectly on Legends of Tomorrow. I'm not liking the character of Zarya on Legends of Tomorrow because she was meant to be Isis, and she's nothing like the Isis I remember. She's kind of flat as an actress. I think it's great that she's a Muslim character, but she's not doing anything for me as far as the character on the show. And, she's got the totem, which is not really a totem. It's Isis's amulet. And it's supposed to be, she is the goddess Isis through that amulet. So this is kind of a watered down version of who should become Isis. But unless that's coming later, they haven't really tied into it too much. They've kind of watered her down. So I'm hoping that changes. Legends of Tomorrow is a great, fun show. I have a prediction that it's going to be the first one that gets canceled when the CW starts to wind down, because I think that they can't keep spreading themselves thin like this and have all their shows keep going. But I do think you'll see crossovers from the characters from the shows come on if any of their shows are canceled. For example, if Arrow stops, it has been going the longest. If Arrow stops, you'll see them show up sometimes on these crossover events or on one of the other shows. So the character will keep recurring, but their main shows will probably end at some point. Because now they're launching the DC TV thing, which is they're starting with Titans, and they have Black Lightnings in that lineup. According to the producers, they're not ruling out the possibility it does take place in the Arrowverse or in one of the alternate Earths, so they could do crossovers with the Titans. They cast Nightwing, and they just revealed his Robin costume, because he starts off as a Robin and becomes Nightwing in the first episode. They have some flack going on online about the actress they cast to play Starfire, because in the comics and the cartoons, Starfire is sort of an orangey colored skinned alien who becomes lovers to Nightwing. And the actress they chose, I forget her name, but she's a African-American model and actress, and people are flipping out about that. But what they forget is, I don't care if they pick an African-American actress, because their skin wasn't white anyways, or black. It was kind of alien. We don't know if they might do what they did with Gamora and have her be a black actress with green skin, or in this case, orange skin with the makeup. We don't know. I'm guessing either she naturally has the orange skin and they save the budget by having her only appear that way, like they do with Manhunter on Supergirl, and she appears like a human with black skin so she could blend in. Or that'll just be the way she looks, but her eyes might be different. I don't really care. I think it's fine as long as they're bringing the character in, they're bringing the Titans into TV. They've got Beast Boy. They haven't announced who it is, but I think they did just announce who's playing Beast Boy. I'm curious to whether he'll have green skin because that's a lot of makeup. Anyways, and on Supergirl, they got the Legion of Superheroes coming on in episode 10. I'm excited because I'm a huge fan of the Legion of Superheroes. They're sort of like Star Trek meets the Justice League. 31st century. They started back in the late 50s, I believe, when they recruited Superboy to join the Legion. That's when Mon-El got introduced and I predicted on my podcast Super Geeks a while back that me and Carlos Pedraza from Axamonitor, I had him on the show, and we were making a guess when they brought Mon-El in that they're going to eventually have him get lead poisoning, we thought he'd go into the Phantom Zone like he did in the comics, and then come out of it in the future to join the Legion. They did sort of like that on Supergirl. He got the lead poisoning. He went through that wormhole, but it brought him to the future, where he married Saturn Girl. Now, in the Supergirl episode where Mon-El came back recently, which was called Awake, they showed the Legion symbols of many other characters. Now, I know Brainiac 5 has been cast. He's going to wake up in episode 10. Supergirl's meant to be with Brainiac in the comics. They can do whatever they want in this show. They've already taken a lot of liberties. Saturn Girl's normally married to Lightning Lad, and she's with Mon-El. But they're going to obviously have a triangle, I think. When Brainiac wakes up, he's a descendant of the Brainiac from that Superman was enemies with. But he's a genius. He's got green skin, or in Supergirl he might have blue skin, because I can't remember the character's name, but she's descended from him, same race. The actress who played Supergirl in Smallville played her Indigo. No, I think it's Indigo. I can't remember the character's name, but she was on Supergirl season 1. She was the one who could merge with computers, and she came from Kalu, the planet Kalu, and that's where Brainiac comes from in Brainiac 5. So we'll see what they do for the makeup, but they've hinted that the Legion was coming for a long time. They showed one of the Legionnaire rings in the Fortress of Solitude in Season 1. They mentioned the planet, the president, played by Linda Carter, was a shapeshifter who came from the same, Durlin. She was a Durlin, and that's the race, one of the races in the Legion of Superheroes, Chameleon Boy. That was another shout out to the Legion. And then Mon-El, of course, came in, and I knew this was coming. And now they've announced episode 10 is called The Legion of Superheroes. It's going to be great. I hope they get their own spin-off show, because there's a lot they could do with that. All right, I've rambled enough. That is this episode of The Hobo Show, and it ran longer than most of mine. But I'll talk about the Legion later, especially when it comes out on Supergirl, because I have a lot to say about that, more than I already have. Peace out.